I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you have a lot going on.
Well, thank you. No, I do, but I'm excited and I appreciate you wanting to talk to me.
Absolutely. Well, I really enjoyed our first conversation, I guess 2 months ago, and that our community is dying for resources. And this particular subject seems like such a mountain to wrap your brain around, for lack of better words. It's so families are so interested and they want to learn, but it's kind of like they don't even know where to begin.
Very true. There's a lot of misinformation and just a lot of ignorance, and people don't even realize, physicians don't even realize that they're ignorant. I was one of them, so I understand. Not a physician, but a person who was ignorant about the medical benefits of cannabis and hemp. So
I think this is a great place to start. Tell us your story, how you got involved in this specialty or niche.
Wonderful. Thank you again for wanting to hear my story. I'm really happy to share it. So I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for a long time, more than 20 years, 25 years. I've worked in many different parts of nursing, depending on where I was, what phase of my life I was in, from, doing home health infusions when I was a young mom, and working in a trauma ICU and working in total hip and total knee surgery. And then most recently, I worked at Johns Hopkins Health System implementing the electronic health record there. And so I've done lots of different parts of nursing. And honestly, never in a million years would I have ever thought that I would be working with cannabis. I had the biggest stigma against cannabis until 2016, and so not too long ago. And the reason that I even considered it was that someone that I really respected that got a license in Maryland to open a grow facility when the program was just becoming something in Maryland, invited me to come and be part of the team to open this medical cannabis grow. And when he invited me, I said, no thanks, cannabis isn't something I believe in. Just might as well be heroin. So no, thank you. Have a nice day. And he asked me to please consider the opportunity and to please do some research. And he kind of plugged some people into me, had some people email me, and I started doing some research. And then I went back to my peers at Hopkins. I went to the research team, talked to all the cannabis research team at Hopkins. I talked to all of these doctors that I had access to, and so many people are like, yeah, we believe it helps people. We've seen it help people anecdotally. We need more research. It's not federally legal, but if you open a dispensary, we'll send you patients. And I was like, really? So I started by just volunteering with this grow facility at first because I wasn't ready to leave what I thought was my rest of my life, my whole career at Hopkins, loving my job. I'm such a fan of Hopkins and the work they do. I mean, nobody's perfect, but generally, overall. So I started volunteering, helping with compliance and writing standard operating procedures and training staff on CPR. And then as part of doing that, I sort of had to work every job. So I learned about the plant and I learned how medical cannabis grow the plant. A lot of them don't use dirt, what the medium they use, how they keep the bugs away without using chemicals, just all these different things about growing, harvesting, trimming, cloning, the different strains. I kind of had to learn it in order to help write the training and write the standard operating procedures. And so I feel like I was on an episode of Dirty Jobs or something. I mopped the floor in the bathroom at the grow facility in a warehouse, and I trimmed the plant, and I, helped to do the first harvest. And then I kind of got moved into helping us figure out how we were going to do packaging and meet the requirements according to the state. And so I worked in the packaging and labeling and lab testing, and then we opened a processing, and I learned how we took the plant and turned it into a vape pen or turned it into a gummy, and then we were ready to open a dispensary. And so then I was working and training dispensary staff and working with that team and learning about inventory and learning about all of the cash management. And I had to know all of the rules and regulations. So I had to understand COMAR, which is what Maryland uses for regulations, and work really closely with the Medical Cannabis Commission in Maryland. And that was an amazing experience, something I just would have never thought I would have ever done. I learned so much about even just like GMP, like good manufacturing practices and processes. And I put all my different nursing experience into work in a very different way that was kind of unrelated to nursing, but nursing had prepared me for that type of critical thinking. And I do have an MBA, so the business background also was useful. And teaching and education has always been a part of my nursing career. And it was going well. And then they even had me go out and be the first salesperson. So I went out and I built relationships with people that were from other companies that were opening dispensaries in Maryland. And I went out and sold our product, sold our flower to those dispensaries and developed those relationships. And again, had never really been trained as a sales and marketing person, but I became that person. And it was just a really great opportunity. I made lots of great connections, and our company was doing really well. We were growing and growing and growing. And then all of a sudden, one day after like another merge with another company, I got a phone call from someone I didn't know out in Illinois who said, we're really grateful to have had you, but we don't need you anymore. So we're cutting some costs. And we decided your position is one of the positions we're going to have to cut out. And so thank you very much. Have a nice day. And that was really hard. I was honestly really devastated because I was like a founding person of this company with, management, executive leadership. And then all of a sudden I was just nothing. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? Do I go back to Hopkins? I mean, they said they would welcome me back if I needed to come back. Do I stay in cannabis? Do I believe in this that much? Like, what do I want to do? I really had never thought, even though I did go to business school, I have an MBA, it was never because I thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always thought I would work for some big healthcare organization. But all of a sudden I was like, I have to stay in cannabis. I can't think of another company that I really want to work for. I felt like I worked for the best at the time. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to have to do this. I'm going to have to be a consultant. And maybe now is the opportunity to really use more of my nursing background. Now that I have this big, huge foundation, let me get more medical about it. And so within 2 weeks of getting laid off, I opened my own business, which at the time was called RN for Wellness. I've now renamed and rebranded it to Ask Nurse Laura, because that's just what people do is they ask Nurse Laura. And now I write contracts with dispensaries where I am the person that can help particularly the more complicated patients or patient who's considering becoming a patient. I do consultations where I help those people or their families try to figure out how cannabis or hemp can be useful as part of their whole medication toolkit, working with some of their traditional prescription and other treatments, as well as some other plant-based alternatives to figure out how we can get people to feel their best and have the least side effects. And I just passed my 3-year anniversary of having my own business.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. You are
Thank you.
Wealth
it's really exciting.
in this area, and I already have 100 questions for you based on your introduction. Pretty powerful.
Well, I'm happy to try to answer them. I'm happy to try to answer them. And I really, one thing you'll learn about me very quickly is if I don't have a real answer, an answer I feel confident about the data behind it or whatever, I will let you know that. I will find out the information and get back to you later. I don't like to just take wild guesses. I like to give, good, valuable information to people. So
would you say that you have to be particularly cautious if you are already using pharma drugs for a condition such as, diabetes or thyroid issues or whatever it might be? Or would you say cannabis is relatively safe incorporating into what you're already doing with, your mainstream doctor?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And the funny thing is, what I think my answer would be, what I would think people would think my answer would be, is going to be opposite of what my answer actually is, because the truth is that cannabis really does not have a lot of drug interactions. And really, even the THC part of cannabis appears to be really safe for most people with mostly whatever they're taking. I would like the word to be heard that you don't have to be afraid of cannabis. I was afraid of cannabis, but you don't have to be afraid of it. However, I'm a huge proponent with anything, even with prescription medication, of start low and go slow. So let's keep everything that you're doing exactly the same. Don't change anything that you're traditionally doing now. And we add in little bits, whether it's CBD, THC, a combination of other cannabinoids. We start low and slow, and then we work our way in. We prime your system. We see how those cannabinoids are going to work and make you feel in relation to the medication you're already taking. If something feels bigger, if it feels more diminished, and then we take steps up. So as you probably noted, I talk to everyone and I tell them, if you don't feel any different in the first 2 weeks of working with me and buying your medicine and trying the cannabis, please don't lose hope. It's not that it doesn't work for you. It's just that we're starting with such low doses to make sure that we don't go from 0 to 100 and have you have a feeling that you don't like or a reaction that you don't enjoy. So we start with just a little and we work our way in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for the purposes of our interview, I'm going to come from the angle of representing the autism community. I've talked to so many parents in Maryland, but really all across the country. I'm connected with people from, East Coast, West Coast, because what happens is you find your people no matter where they are, right? You find your tribe. And so we have all support groups globally, and I have people in other countries that I'm connected to. So I'm just going to come from that angle.
Wow.
What I'm finding is for a lot of folks with autism, and it may predominantly have to do with the fact that we're dealing with pediatrics, but cannabis to be a last quote unquote resort or a last call. Like they reach crisis or desperation before they want to explore that. And that wasn't my experience with cannabis. I actually had it on my list a long time. I was patiently waiting for it to be legal for medicinal reasons in the state of Maryland. And once it was, I immediately applied for my son's card. So my experience is a little bit different. I research a lot, and I'm very open to alternative type therapies. But I do think that for most, it's a sort of last resort. I don't know what else to do. I'm desperate. So from that angle, parents may be interested in cannabis come from maybe two walks of life. One is that they have really high intense behaviors for all kinds of reasons, whether it just be that there's a huge communication barrier, they're internally in pain, and they haven't yet identified what's causing the pain. Or the other one I hear a lot about is epilepsy, which is also where we fall. My son had epilepsy. That was my push for it. Let's step back, and can we go to like Cannabis 101 and talk about the cannabinoids on a really simple level? Can we try to like build everything up and give a crash course to these parents?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So first of all, cannabis or marijuana is still federally illegal. It's a Schedule I drug. It's right there with heroin. And so the laws, like the federal law, still says you can't have it, you can't use it. State laws have the authority to, and in many states, I think over 27 states have medical cannabis now. I think there are only 5 states that have no law related to something related to cannabis. It changes so frequently. Those numbers are so hard to keep up with because it's like every week another state is added. But states are able to authorize the use of cannabis for adult use, recreational, just enjoyment purposes, kind of like going to a liquor store, or for medical purposes. speaking of Maryland in particular, Maryland has been a medical state with an active program. The first dispensaries opened in 2017. And nothing makes the cannabis different. When they say it's medical cannabis or they say it's adult use or recreational cannabis, it's the same plant. And even the formulations can be very similar, whether you go into an adult use dispensary in Colorado or California, or you go into a medical dispensary in Maryland. If you have a card, you can walk in and you can find green plant material, dried plant material that you can purchase, that you could put in a bong and smoke it, or put in a pipe or roll into a joint. And then the other end of the spectrum is a topical patch or a tincture that's only CBD. So a wide variety of things. But I find that a lot of people don't know that a medical cannabis dispensary still sells things that can give someone the ability to get super high if they want to. That is part of it all. It's all the same plant. What makes the plant valuable are cannabinoids and terpenes. And so the plant itself, if you ever were to see it growing, and honestly, up until I was in this business, I thought that 5-leaf that is like everywhere, that's like the symbol of cannabis, I thought that's what people were smoking. I didn't even know that there was something else. But the plant has buds on it, kind of like flower buds, and it's those buds that are actually where the trichomes and where the medicine is, much more than in the leaves. Really, for the most part, we just discard the leaves. Some of the leaves, they're called like sugar leaves and whatnot, very close to that flower, that bud might have a little bit of medicine, so some people will juice them or do something with them. But for the most part, all the leaves, just kind of like on a rose bush, the rose is the prize, not all the green leaves around it. So it's the same way with cannabis. And I share that, and maybe for some people that's like common knowledge, but for me, it wasn't. I thought that the leaves are what people smoked. So it's just interesting, like a tobacco leaf.
Right.
So that bud of that plant has terpenes and cannabinoids. And cannabinoids are the THC. That's the most popular one. That's the cannabinoid that is intoxicating, that for years and years and years people have used, and it can make you feel high, and is very well known to be good for pain relief and good for cognition impairment, meaning if you have post-traumatic stress disorder and you're having trouble because you're having like daytime nightmares, THC can block your memory such that while you're using THC, you won't have those thoughts, so that you might be able to function and sleep. THC also blocks the receptor to your brain that signals pain back to your brain. So if you have a significant pain point, even chronic pain, THC can block the pain receptor. It doesn't make the pain, it's not that it actually goes away, but it blocks the receptor so you don't feel the pain, along with a lot of other things. CBD, the other bigger, well-known cannabinoid, there's over 100, so we're just going to talk about the two main ones. CBD, cannabidiol, is another pretty major component of the cannabis plant, and it is not intoxicating. It is psychoactive. It does work on your brain, but it's not intoxicating. So you do not feel high from using CBD. And CBD is also a large part of the hemp plant. So the hemp plant and the cannabis plant are sister plants. They're the same genus of, I'm not a botanist, but they're like sisters. Maybe they're stepsisters, but they're sisters. And the hemp plant, which is federally legal, looks very similar to cannabis and has a bud just like the cannabis plant. And the hemp plant naturally is super high in this CBD and sometimes has a little bit of THC in it too. And so it's classified as hemp and like federally legal when it's 0.3% or less of THC. And so generally hemp and stuff derived from hemp are not going to make you feel high, and they're federally legal. whereas the cannabis plant can also have CBD, but generally it's higher in THC.
Okay.
CBD is anti-anxiety, so it's really good for reducing anxiety. It's anti-inflammatory and anti-anxiolytic. Forget what the other big word is at the moment. It's slipping my mind, but it's really good for tremors and seizures and shaking types of disorders, Parkinson's, epilepsy, benign, it's non-essential tremors. It's just good for those types of disorders in the body.
So throughout our body, we actually have receptors for them to bind to. Am I saying that correctly?
We have something in our body called the endocannabinoid system. They don't teach about this. In some schools now they're starting to teach, but they do not teach about it. I didn't learn about it in nursing school, but we have an endocannabinoid system in our body. We're born with cannabinoids in our body, particularly the CBD. It's even in breast milk when babies are breastfeeding. And similar to having serotonin and melatonin in our bodies, over time, the way we live our lives, the physical stress, the emotional stress on our bodies tends to wear away and wear down that amount of natural, they're called endocannabinoids in our system. And so when we use something like a hemp or a cannabis-derived CBD or THC, that's a phytocannabinoid, and the phytocannabinoids can be utilized in our body to supplement our endocannabinoid system. And it's a little bit different with each of those two major cannabinoids. The THC works on a very specific receptor, a very specific CB1 and CB2 receptors in our body, where CBD is more generally received in our body. I mean, we could get really neurological, and I'm not a neurologist either, but there's something called the glutamate GABA modulators, and this is how neurologically why CBD helps in our body, because it helps with that modulation, especially in someone that has a disorder like autism or seizures, where their body, it just doesn't work as well. And particularly serotonin, I think, is often a problem in autism. Having enough serotonin, being able to utilize serotonin, and that impacts some of the problems with interaction and just behavior, social interaction, cognition, and sometimes even with just being able to speak. And so CBD, it's received well, and it impacts the ability with the use of the serotonin in our bodies, which is different than THC. THC works different with our serotonin. So CBD is really good for that autistic person because of some of that, the way it works with the serotonin in our body.
So we have just started to scratch the surface, and I already can't help but pause and say how phenomenal is nature and our body.
It really is.
I mean,
it really is amazing. And
so I told you earlier that I got my son's card within, months of it being legal in Maryland. And he was among we were kind of holding steady. He was among one of 100 pediatrics in the entire state who had his green card for a few years. That is now definitely climbing, increasing pretty quickly. In the beginning, when I first was trying to, because even though I thought I did so much research and was ready to take the plunge, I wasn't. I mean, I might have had a foundation, but trying to figure out what was best for my son's needs, nothing can necessarily prepare you for that, which is why you and your consultation company there's such a huge need for that support. But I think I had it all wrong in the beginning. I kept thinking if I keep increasing the it would help the anxiety, it would help the seizures, when in fact, I wasn't utilizing enough of the CBD. And when I finally figured that out, there was a turning point. And I'm high dosing my son 3 to 4 times a day on just pure CBD or hemp. And it has been a game changer.
And remind me, are you using a CBD RSO?
I did use that for a while, but I'm actually just back to the tincture again.
Okay. And the reason that I asked that question is because I think this is really important just to add here is that one of the reasons that the plant and these programs are so important is because there's something to be said for, the way nature created it and the ability of the plant and the least interrupted, the most natural form to be able to use these compounds. Because there are prescription medications that have THC and prescription medications that have CBD. And some people do get relief from them, and some doctors are prescribing them. And that's how, really early on we used to use, Marinol for people undergoing chemotherapy, and it worked as a good antiemetic and an appetite stimulant. And so those options, particularly for parents who are nervous and concerned about doing this, or if it's not legal in their state to do this through a medical cannabis program, being able to have the option of using a prescription cannabinoid, synthetic or more natural, might be a good baby step to see how do we respond. Does this help at all? So the one, I think it's Epidiolex, is the prescription CBD. And for some people, for some patients, particularly pediatric patients, it's really helpful. Some people get a little bit of relief, but not enough relief. And again, part of the reason is because when you use the plant, when you're using, for example, a full spectrum tincture where they took the plant and they just did just enough extraction and just enough, cleaning and formulating the product and then tested it and then put it into a clean tincture, you're getting more potential other cannabinoids or these terpenes, which we haven't even talked about yet, that add benefit to what I would call, or science calls, is the entourage effect, like a bigger bang for your buck than just taking a pill that is a very isolated, potentially synthetically derived compound. And that makes a big difference, and our bodies really do seem to respond. Like if you just think about taking vitamins, right? How many people take a synthetically derived, chemical vitamin to try to replace that they don't eat enough fruits and vegetables and they want to be healthy, where if we could actually eat all of the fruits and vegetables that are recommended daily, many of us, most of us likely, wouldn't need to take a daily vitamin. We could just eat the fruits and vegetables in the least altered form and probably have enough of those nutrients that we need in our diet. So it's similar to that with cannabis. Being able to use a more natural version of these cannabinoids can give a better benefit. Our body responds better to it in many cases.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about the terpenes then.
The terpenes are like the essential oils of the cannabis plant. So many people know like simple, basic essential oils like lavender. Everyone, I think, a lot of people know lavender is relaxing. Lavender smells good. People put lavender on their pillow at night, or lavender is in stress relief oil and stress relief lotion. And everybody is like, oh, lavender is for relaxing and sleeping. Well, there's a terpene that is very similar to lavender. It's called linalool. Linalool is natural part of many of the strains of the cannabis plant, and linalool is known to be calming and relaxing and helps people to fall asleep. And then there's another pretty major terpene called limonene. Some people say limonene. I call it limonene. And limonene is like it sounds. It's like lemon and lime. It's citrusy. And generally, people drink orange juice in the morning because citrus is uplifting and stimulating. And so limonene is a natural terpene. It comes as part of some of the strains of the plant, and it tends to help with alertness and focus and energy uplifting.
Are the terpenes in the body, are they treated like the cannabinoids, like they bind to our endocannabinoid system receptors?
That's a good question, but no, they do not. They're different in that they're more about our senses. They really do have to do with taste and smell. It's important to note that, because sometimes people get all excited about terpenes that are necessarily like added to an edible, and I don't want to say absolutely positively we have science to back that doesn't work, but it seems, and at least there is research to support that inhaling terpenes or lingering terpenes, like in a tincture, for example, in your mouth, absorbing them that way, or in a topical lotion, again, a lot to do with taste and touch and smell seem to have more benefit. Again, similar to some of they're not essential oils, but I like to compare that, because not that essential oils are mainstream, but it's a little more mainstream than talking about terpenes.
Sure. No, that's a good
So they play a role, but it's a different role, and it works really well when it's all together. So when we're trying to decide what a particular person, because it isn't one size fits all, it's not weight-based necessarily, it's really depending on a particular person's body and particular person and what they're putting in their body. Like, are they eating a balanced diet, or are they on a limited diet, and are they sleeping, and are they exercising, like what those parts of their world, and how much trauma and stress has their body had physically or emotionally. Like, that all plays into how their body is going to be able to receive cannabis and terpenes, and also how depleted their endocannabinoid system might be. And so how much cannabis is needed to sort of balance their body back to some type of homeostasis. But we don't really have, I can't say, oh, go get this lab test. Some labs are trying to figure out ways to figure out and sort of report out on the status of your endocannabinoid system. It would be so wonderful if we could figure out how to do a test to understand where you stand today and what supplementation you need to make your body happy. We're not there yet. I think there are definitely companies that are trying to figure some of that out. That would be really helpful. Terpenes don't work that way. That really is a little bit more about knowing what the terpenes do or supposed to do, and then trying to match that with what your goal is. Even if you're using a high CBD, low THC compound, a tincture or something routinely, you might want to use two different ones and use one with a certain number of terpenes in it, certain type of terpenes in it during the daytime when we're awake and trying to function, and if it's a child trying to do some schoolwork or a person trying to go to work. And then in the evening, we might switch to a different set of terpenes with the same cannabinoids, same ratio of CBD to THC, but just different terpenes to tell our brain, okay, well, I smell this now and I taste this. This is more about me relaxing and going to sleep.
I see. Approximately how many terpenes are there known currently?
We talk about like 27 to 30 really common terpenes. I think I've seen a list recently that they discovered a couple more, so maybe there's like 35. But really, probably even about 10 is the most you'd ever see, like on a label from a lab that you could actually look at and discover.
Okay.
There's another terpene that a lot of pain relief patients are often looking for, which I don't know that this terpene really applies in the autism spectrum and with children so much. It might be something we're honestly avoiding, but it's called myrcene, myrcene, myrcene. Myrcene is a little bit like mango. Myrcene is sedating and pain relieving, so much so that if you were to take two equal for some intense cannabis products, like if someone is picking a strain, if they're going to inhale it, and one has 18% THC, but is super high in myrcene, and one has 22% THC, but has little to no myrcene, the person might think, oh, the more THC, the better for my pain relief. But the truth is the one with less THC but more myrcene might actually give them more pain relief overall.
Okay, interesting. So more doesn't necessarily mean better.
More doesn't always mean better, particularly with CBD. More sometimes can negate the benefits. It really is very tricky. And CBD in particular is interesting in that in low doses it acts one way, and in higher doses it acts another way. There are some medications like that. There are some medications that, Wellbutrin is a good example. And in a low dose, it's used for smoking cessation, and in higher doses, it's used as an antidepressant. So some medications have a little bit of a different effect based on the dose, and that's how CBD is. CBD in a lower dose can help someone to be more alert, more awake, more focused. It does tend to work well even for like ADHD type symptoms, distractibility. But in a higher dose is a little bit more relaxing and could help to promote sleep. Not make someone as sleepy as THC might, but definitely help with relaxation.
Okay. I wanted to ask, because you had earlier mentioned about priming the body, is that thought parallel to the endocannabinoid system, like how long it takes your body to prime, or are they kind of two separate?
No, that's a very good correlation in your head. So it has to do with how depleted your endocannabinoid system is, which, like I said, we don't have a functional test or a lab test to know that answer. Hopefully someday, similar to how you can go and get hormonally tested, which you might not do at the traditional doctor, but there are places that do hormone testing, with saliva or hair or something. Hopefully someday, not too far away, we'll have labs that do that type of testing that are giving us our endocannabinoid system. The problem with that is similar to the way hormones are tested, is that it will only be for a kind of a moment in time. So it'll be somewhat useful, but would need to be repeated, would have to be very frequently tested and have cycles just like the rest of your body has cycles. But based on a review of systems and a review of medical history and just personal history, family history, we can get an idea. I just recently had a patient, that was telling me about multiple surgeries, a disease process, and then also history of trauma and abuse. And so all of those things led me to believe that this person may very well benefit from cannabinoids, but is probably going to need a little bit longer before we start to see an effect as we try to build back, particularly that CBD, that cannabidiol, as we try to build that back up and help the body to just say, oh, wait, this is what it feels to be more balanced and more regulated. And now other parts of me can work better, and I can sleep better, and I can function better, and I can respond to stress better.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's part of true healing. True healing, not just masking the symptoms.
Mm-hmm. And that's really important. And I think my peers in the industry and scientists would agree that CBD is more about that long-term healing. And again, with CBD, we might load a little, take more at first, and then be able to stay at a lower dose longer. And depending on what it is we're treating, possibly for something like anxiety, maybe not need to take CBD all the time over time. But sure, THC is more of the moment. THC is more like taking a pain medicine, or you take it, it works, and it's not quite the same as building up in our body over time. We don't take a loading dose of THC, but it still is very functional and really, in my opinion, so much healthier and safer than some of the other options we have for relief of pain.
One of the conversations that I have with so many parents is, because I feel very comfortable saying, have you tried CBD? Have you tried hemp? I'm not going to give advice, anything related with THC, because I'm not qualified. But I only have my experience with my own child. But with CBD and hemp, I feel very confident in saying, have you tried it? It's everywhere, right? It's very accessible, which actually does bring up a point parents really do need to research and look at the label, because everybody and their brother seems to have a CBD or a hemp oil. I personally look for things like the third-party tested, is it non-GMO, things like that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything more.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand what's in a product that you're going to purchase and third-party labs and who's testing it. And I very much, that's one of the things I do to help people sometimes if they're looking at hemp and they're going to use a hemp-derived product. I don't specifically work for any company or get directly paid by any company. I mean, a couple of them I do get a discount on taking classes or something. I'm not going to say I get nothing, but I have a couple of hemp-derived CBD companies that I recommend and will work with, because they're companies that I know where the hemp was grown, that it was grown. I want it to be grown in the United States, and I want to know what kind of chemicals were sprayed on it to keep the bugs off, because it is a plant. It's going to have bugs if it's grown outside. Was it grown inside or outside? When they harvested it, did they test it at that time? Did they use a third-party certified lab, or is it an in-house lab, or is it a made-up lab? Who is doing the testing? When they put it into a tincture, as part of that process, what is the carrier oil? Who makes the carrier oil? Where did the carrier oil come from? And then was it tested again by that same third-party certified laboratory? And then what are they adding to it? Are they adding plant-based terpenes? Are they adding flavoring? Are they adding coloring? How long have they been in business? Is the consistency a nice, clear, clean consistency? Is it a full spectrum hemp-derived, or is it distillate, meaning they did the quickest, fastest, kind of ripped away all of the terpenes and other cannabinoids and just put the CBD, which I'm not saying that that's bad, because for some people, we need to use a distillate or an isolated CBD because we can't take any risk of having any at all THC. Like if I work for the government and I'm getting drug tested routinely, and I could lose all of my benefits if I have even the slightest bit of THC, even though I'm not using THC. So sometimes it's beneficial to have that as an option, but for the most part, that full spectrum, the one that is less processed, can be more beneficial because of that entourage effect. So those are all really important things to consider when looking at a product. And also the difference between hemp oil and CBD oil and hemp seeds and how that all works. I think there are quite a few companies that are tricking our consumers into believing that they're getting something, a hemp oil, that's going to help with seizures or autism or anxiety or any of these things. Not that hemp oil is bad for you, because hemp oil is a healthy fat. It's I don't know if it's an omega-3 or an omega-6, but it's a healthy fat. Hemp seeds is it's another seed oil. It can be good for you, but hemp oil does not necessarily have any CBD in it, and so people get confused and they interchange those words, and that's really important. Now there are some CBD oils that are based in hemp oil, which is fine. That's fine, and it's both. It's got the CBD and the hemp, but it's just important to note that CBD, the cannabinoid, should be in milligrams in some type of carrier oil, which is often olive oil or MCT oil, which is a type of coconut oil or grapeseed oil. So just understanding all of those things really does make a difference.
The carrier oil is so important. I'm really glad that you dove into that more, because not everyone quite understands that part of it. That's overlooked a lot. And it's so important. And so the next question is, considering, we talked about priming the system, and it's definitely individualized depending on each person's endocannabinoid system and how depleted or not depleted it may be. But I've talked to many parents who have said, yes, I have in fact tried CBD and it didn't do anything. And usually they give up within the week. And so could you give advice on how long maybe they should hang in there and what to look for, or how to maybe just go about that trial and error process before they are ready to throw the towel in and say, no, it really didn't do anything?
Yes, I think that's a really important point to bring up. So thank you for bringing it up. I tell my patients that at minimum, taking it every day, 30 days, at minimum, is the earliest I would really expect to see any type of result from taking CBD. And it depends on what we're taking it for, so what type of result we might be looking for. So, for example, for someone that has agitation or anxiety, it might not be that they take CBD and all of a sudden they just feel perfect and like the world is good and I have no anxiety. It might be that after like 3 to 4 weeks, all of a sudden it's like, I woke up today. Something is different. It feels like something's missing. And then you realize, oh, wait, that like gnawing, churning in my stomach, that tight chest feeling, that the symptoms that I normally wake up with, I just don't have them. But I don't feel high, or I don't feel like, ooh, let me go, paint roses and butterflies. It's just, the edge is gone. Something is gone. Like that sometimes is the earliest sign. Or, for example, for some of my Parkinson's patients, it's like, hey, we got her to the table today, and when she went to reach for her coffee, she didn't spill it everywhere. She actually was able to pick up the coffee cup. Now, might have still had a little bit of tremor, but was able to control it enough to drink a cup of coffee. So more subtle changes happening early on. I usually tell people to give it. Now, we might be adjusting doses. We might be adjusting the route of administration over 30 to 90 days. I usually tell people, especially people who are using cannabis and hemp as a last-ditch effort, to give it at least 90 days to really determine. And during that time, we're trying to figure out a couple of things. First of all, do we have a good quality, reliable product? That's number one. Because if you tell me you took it before and then you share with me what you took and it was, purchased from an outlet store or the gas station, it might not be. It could be. I don't want to discount. Somebody might be selling a good quality product in one of those places, but we need to know it's a good quality product, and you need to have taken it for at least minimum 30 days, ideally 90 days, and we evaluate. And during that time, where we're adjusting the dose, taking more or less, we might be adjusting the time of day, depending on when a person is having the most symptoms. We'll take it surrounding that. If we notice that it's impacting falling asleep or sleeping in the daytime, we might adjust the dose for that, adjust the time of day we take it. And again, we might be taking a little bit more, and then once we get to a good, okay, we're seeing some good progress, we're doing okay, we might try to cut it back down, because more isn't always better. And sometimes, and not only is it like cost effective, but it's just putting less in your body. So if we get to a place where for 2 or 3 or even a month consistently we're having good results, at that point, it's either time, if the patient and the family are interested, to talk to the doctor about cutting back maybe a prescription medication if that was one of our goals, or to look at the cannabis or CBD and consider going back down just one notch and see, do we still have good results at one dose lower? Because if we do, then why not stay at one dose lower?
Sure. I think that's excellent guidance, because it's really hard to navigate these waters in the beginning. And I do think some families give up a little too quickly, because it is very, very difficult being in crisis, right? You're just desperate to find anything that'll help. It's hard to ride these difficult waves. So I think that that's such great guidance, and hopefully that'll clear up some things for some families. I'm curious, though, about the anti-pesticide. I'm a little bit nutso about that. It's like one of my things, and I know how dangerous things like Roundup are, for example. And certainly we don't want to put food in our body that's been sprayed with pesticides. We don't want to put medical cannabis into our children's body. So how do they keep the bugs away?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. The cannabis laws are state by state. And so in Maryland, we're very lucky because Maryland has a very strict no pesticide, no chemical rule. And the things that they test for, I think, I don't want to make up a number. See, this is what I told you. I'm not going to just make something up. But there's a long list of things that they test for, and the number has to be like 0.001. When we first started the medical cannabis program in Maryland and had the first labs and the first flower going for testing, everything was testing positive, and the labs and the growers were fighting with the state and with the regulations saying, like, we didn't even put anything in there and it's still showing up positive. Like, how is this possible? And they had to do a lot of calibration. And I learned back then, because at that point I was on the grower side, so I was trying to understand how are we ever going to be able to sell anything if we can't pass lab testing, that Maryland has one of the strictest programs. Not only do they test for chemicals and pesticides, and it's a no pesticide, but they also test for metals and yeast and mold and like any other thing that you could imagine that you might not want to put in your body, especially an immune compromised, more ill person might not want to put in their bodies. So we're really lucky in Maryland. So what do they do? First of all, one of the main things is room isolation. So most of the grows, and I've been in many of them in Maryland, there are, I think, about 15, maybe 17 now operational grows in Maryland. It's hard to say because some people buy out other people and then the numbers get a little skewed, but most of them are indoor grows. And in the indoor grow, they have separate rooms so that if a bug or something gets on a plant, like a mite or something, it's only that room they have to deal with. It's not an entire crop of, the whole, everything they're growing. So one of the things is isolation, and they have like a sick room. They have the room that if they see something that could be of concern, that they move the things to, that we need to wash this. And really as simple as like washing it with soap and water, or sometimes they'll use neem oil maybe, or they use natural like ladybugs to come in and eat the bugs. And they use some type of, maybe it's the neem, which is like the fish. It's something fish-based, but then I think some of them even stopped doing that because some people have allergies to fish, so they stopped with even anything fish-based. There are lots of really interesting natural ways, some of them that are time-consuming to take care of and make sure that the plants continue to grow and don't get diseased. At the grow facility, it's so amazing. Some of the grow facilities do have videos because one of the things they do is limit exposure. So not just everyone and anyone can walk through a grow facility because we all carry stuff on our bodies. We carry, probably dust mites, whatever, on our bodies from being out in nature and being human. And so many of the grow facilities, I'm not sure if it's 100% of them, but again, speaking to Maryland specifically, they have the staff change into their clothes for work in the locker room at work. So their street clothes come off, their other clothes go on. They wear hair nets, and you'd think they worked in a sterile environment in a hospital. Beard covers, gloves. Some of them have, and it's some kind of a requirement at some point, either sticky mats or blowing machines or a liquid solution that their shoes go into, and they still put shoe covers or change their shoes. But there are all of these things that they do to prevent things from coming in. Like I said, not open tours, and then the testing, and then if they do see something, isolating. And sometimes it's as simple as, if it's possible, to just remove by hand whatever it is, but oftentimes it has to do with some type of a bath that the plants get.
That is so
natural bugs. Yeah. It really is interesting, and it's interesting too because I'm a gardener as well, but an outdoor gardener, and in the garden, like you said, I'm just not a fan of chemicals, right? We don't put fertilizer on the lawn because we don't want that to run off into the garden. And in the garden, we are trying to keep the bees and keep away the bad bugs, and it's a lot of picking bugs off of plants and sometimes spraying bugs and washing them with soap and water.
I do hope, selfishly, as a parent, that somehow they do come up with a way we can eventually take safe tours. I realize it probably needs to be done as they're creating the building, like an assembly line, like going through a tunnel with windows and seeing how.
So I have to tell you, the grow facility that I went into the industry to work for in Howard County, the way that building is set up, if they had the money, they could have done that. That was a dream of mine from the very beginning. I was like, we can safely have like a brewery tour, but with glass, so that people can see everything that's going on, but not actually be contaminating anything. There's no reason for them. It's not enough of a reason to do it. Like, it wasn't like there was going to be an admission and a charge, and again, it's federally illegal. So maybe when adult use comes along, maybe there's a bigger likelihood of that. And maybe out west, maybe in Colorado or California, someone does that. I do know that some of the grow facilities, if you look them up online, whether it's on YouTube or on a social media page, some of them do provide virtual tours of their grow facilities, and they'll have one person who works there who is all donned in their, mask and hairnet and scrubs. One of the companies, I no longer do work with them, but I used to do some consulting for District Cannabis. They are in DC and in Maryland. And they have that. They have, I don't know if you can find it on YouTube or on whether it's Facebook or Instagram, but they have probably still there recorded virtual tours of what it looks like inside the grow facility. It'll never be the same as being there in person, because the smell of the terpenes, the smell of the plants, and the heat, the different rooms, because the other thing they do to keep the bugs at bay and to make the plants grow to the most optimal medicinal value is they severely control the temperature and the lighting in the room. So all of the different rooms are on different light cycles, day and night cycles, with light are different depending on the phase of growth. So when it's a little tiny plant versus when it's flowering, it gets more light or less light, and a higher temperature or a cooler temperature, all based on what result they're looking for to get the optimal amount of terpenes and cannabinoids. In many cases, in a grow facility, the highest THC is what they're trying to promote when we're talking about a cannabis grow. It's very, very technical and really talented people. It's not just people that love weed. Like, the people working in the grow are very talented. Some of them with great, botany degrees and all kinds of masters in plant medicine, unrelated to cannabis, just related to growing things. It's all very transferable and amazing what some of the people can do. I mean, I learned so much from being there, doing that, being a part of it, more than I could ever learn in a classroom, if it were even really offered in a classroom. There is a program. If people are super interested and they just want to go to school, the University of Maryland has the Cannabis Science Therapeutics program. It's not particularly for medical professionals. It's meant for anyone who wants to take a graduate level education in cannabis. It talks about the laws and the regulations and the history and some of the growing and some of the medicine and the science. I haven't taken the course. I am trying to promote it, though, because I think it's wonderful that we have it. There are some community colleges that also have little mini classes that you could take, cannabis, basics, cannabis 101, and some online courses. Healer.com is probably a good place for parents, HEALER, healer.com. If anybody decides to take any courses there, have them talk to me first, because I could probably get them a discount code. And then Realm of Caring, REALM, realmofcaring.org, I think. Hopkins has done a whole lot of research with them and with CBD. They have lots of good free information, particularly for parents, on that website. And then my website is asknurselora.com. I need to get more information onto my website. I'm so busy working that I haven't taken enough time to put enough sort of blog in information on the website, but that's how you could reach me and get more information. And I'm happy to help try to, connect people with resources, and anywhere I can use sort of my name or buying power to get someone a discount. I'm always happy to try to do that. And I just want to reiterate, because I'm guessing we're probably wrapping up soon, that nothing I'm saying is medical advice. I am a registered nurse and not a doctor. And even if I were a doctor, because it's federally illegal, THC, it's challenging to give it as medical advice. But I do have a background, and I have taken multiple certifications and coursework. I work with some really amazing professionals across the country and internationally. Like you said, you find your people that are scientists and doctors who have been in this for a very long time doing research on the plant, lots of research out of Israel. And I do my best to help educate people and to do no harm and improve people's lives. So that's me, asknurselora.com.
Thank you for saying all of that. I have one more question regarding the process in the state of Maryland. For me, it was relatively easy. However, I had a hard time getting to the right place on the state of Maryland website. So could you just give us maybe a general overview of how parents could obtain their card and what the process is? You do have to go to a cannabis physician, et cetera.
Yes, I will do that quickly. So again, in Maryland, so every state has their own commission. Sometimes it's through the Department of Health. It's not a separate cannabis commission. It falls under the Department of Health, and Maryland started like that. Then we had this commission, and probably at some point it's going to go back to that. But the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, the website is the acronym for Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission. So it's mmcc.maryland.gov, mmcc.maryland, all spelled out, .gov. And that brings you to the home page of the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, where you can click on new patient registration, or find a provider, or how to register as a caregiver. And when it comes to pediatrics, you have to register the patient, and also you have to register as a caregiver. Being a caregiver for cannabis doesn't have anything to do with being a legal guardian. It just has to do with being the person that's connected to that patient in the system that is able to touch their medicine. But it's just a little bit trickier when it's the patient under 21. And so when you go to that website, you don't need to see a doctor first or anything. You just go to that website, you start filling out information online. It's mostly about certifying that you are a resident in the state of Maryland. You have to have a picture, which is similar to a passport picture, square formatted picture, shoulders up, facing forward, white background. It tells you this on the website. And then proof of ID, a picture of an ID, a state-issued ID, or a driver's license, front and back. And again, when you click on the new patient registration, there's a list of all of these things, so you can gather them before you actually start doing the registration, because you have to have that stuff handy to be uploaded onto the form all at one time. Once you do that whole part, they do generally charge $50. There are some exceptions, but the state charges $50 for the processing of all that paperwork and for issuing of the plastic card that will be your medical cannabis card for the patient. I believe the caregiver is free, but the caregiver also gets a card, and the caregiver also registers that they're a Maryland resident. Then you have to find a provider. So there is a list of providers that's also on this same website. Sometimes you can get lucky, and because any provider can be a cannabis recommending provider, they just have to take an online course and be a doctor. Actually, they could be a doctor, a physician's assistant, a nurse practitioner, a gynecologist, a dermatologist, they could be a dentist. There's lots of options. But if you look at that list, it sometimes is outdated. You can find a doctor that you already see on there, or you can go to one of these cannabis-specific doctors. And at first I thought that was kind of hokey. I wasn't really a fan of these like canna pop-up doctors. But what I've learned is we need them, because so many providers, are very busy doing what they do routinely. They do not have time to learn all the rules, understand this whole process, and also they are at risk for losing Medicare and Medicaid patients and funding because they are now doing something related to cannabis, which is still federally illegal. So it's kind of tricky for doctors. It's not that they're just trying to be, rude and say, no, I'm against it, I'm not going to help you. For some of them, they have some good reasons why they're not able to recommend for their patients. So the groups that have popped up that are specifically working in the lane of cannabis, similar to hemp-derived CBD, there are better ones and there are worse ones. There are some that are going to just give everybody a card. They're just going to check a box for everybody, give them their $200, and you've got it. They're out there. And then there are some that will spend, kind of like we're talking today, a full hour with you, really try to understand, do an in-person visit, maybe even an actual physical exam, and then determine if you seem to be a good candidate for cannabis or not. And then there's like everywhere in between. With COVID, we've had the opportunity to do more telemedicine and video visit consultations for cannabis, and that is very helpful for a lot of people, since a lot of our patients are really sick and have trouble getting to the doctor. Mm-hmm. One of my best friends does have one of these practices, so I have quite a few recommendations for those practices of people who do certifications that are thoroughly giving you like something for your money and actually considering whether a person is a good fit for cannabis or not. And so the other thing is there are diagnoses that are like the criteria for getting a card. And so in some states, not everybody can get a card because if you don't have one of those conditions, you don't qualify for a card. In Maryland, it's a blessing that we have a category that is called other, and the other category allows a provider to make a determination and say, I think for this, whatever it is, that this patient could benefit from the use of medical cannabis. And so a doctor has the ability to give a medical cannabis recommendation to anyone for any reason. That helps us with anxiety and insomnia and some of those conditions that are not on the formal list. And autism would also fit in that other category.
I was just going to say, I don't think autism actually is one of them, is it?
No, it's not.
So that is good. Thank God we have that flexibility in Maryland.
Yes, because you can be in a medical cannabis legal state and still unable to get a card.
Right. And of course, we know with autism, like so many other diagnoses, it's really a collection of symptoms at the end of the day. Well, this was incredibly helpful. I mean, I could talk to you all day, but I realized that you have a very busy schedule. As we're wrapping up, for parents who are interested in exploring this avenue, in the beginning when they wrote the legislation to make it legal in the state of Maryland for medicinal purposes, not everything was covered, but it happens every year with every new bill. It's not like a blanket, right? It's like trial and error and figuring out, maybe prioritizing or figuring out what needs to happen immediately. And then as time goes on, they're like, oh, we need to add this language. And some of the language that we found that we needed to add, and I know that you had a very active role in it. I had an active role as a parent, and you can explain it a little bit more. But finally, the language does state school nurse can administer the medical cannabis with, the appropriate paperwork from the physician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Connor and Raina's law is really helpful and made a huge difference for many students who, we finally got here, we finally had this ability, and then it still wasn't able to be used during the week, during the school day, without, a parent going and driving the child off campus and administering the medicine and bringing that to school, and depending on how many times a day. So was a big problem. And I don't want to take extra credit. I didn't have as much beforehand involvement in that. They were already sort of pushing it through, and it was happening when I got involved with the Connor Sheffield, with his family, and with what is now the Connor Sheffield Foundation. But I'm very familiar with this story and talk with a lot of people and actually tried to get involved even in helping to educate the school nurses. I learned that there is a little program that they do to educate the school nurses, but I think it's sad that the school nurses now are in a little bit of a bind because they are now authorized to and administering cannabis products to patients. Hopefully the patients know a little bit about what it is and why they're getting it, but I don't know that they're as prepared and as aware as they potentially could be, which I'm really grateful that it's better and that there is an opportunity for kids to not have to, and parents to not have to interrupt the day to be able to have kids in school and using cannabis. And again, we're not talking about them like smoking a joint and getting high in the middle of the school day. We're talking about most often a tincture of some sort or a little tablet, that just goes under the tongue and is actually helping the kid to be present and be able to perform to a degree at school and function and get the education that they're there to receive.
Yeah, absolutely. You stated that perfectly, because there was a time where I had to go stand outside the school and administer it. It gets messy because, it interrupts his day, and his school is 45 miles from my house. So it made things very complicated. So I'm very glad that we are over that hurdle, but obviously we have a lot of work to do, and maybe we can lay the groundwork for next session to get nurses more support that they need, that you were just alluding to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, that definitely is one of my goals in the future, is to just get more involved on the legislative side of things.
Oh, you would be you're a wealth of knowledge, and you would be such a huge asset to guide that, for sure. But I can't thank you enough for taking time to talk with me today, and hopefully we've provided Cannabis 101 to our families, and it has maybe piqued their interest or at least given them a solid foundation and some confidence considering how cannabis is grown in Maryland. More families will be open to trying this sooner than later. Let's not wait till everything else hasn't worked. Start experimenting now, because they have you right here in our state as an amazing resource to help guide them.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And I also have resources with some great pediatric cannabis physicians to rely on also. So it's not even just me. If someone gets me, they have me and the resources that support me, which can be really helpful and useful. So across the country, it's really good. So yes, happy to help. AskNurseLaura.com. Feel free to reach out to me.